From 500 to 575, many petty princes and kings, who led small war bands, ruled diminutive areas of the Tibetan plateau. As nomadic hunters sought protection from raids, they turned to these sovereigns for safety. The sovereigns eventually were competing for more people to recognize their suzerainty over them. As this occurred, the small kingdoms went to war with one another. The first kingdom to find any success was the Yadsik dynasty, whose army were better equipped and more organized than the rest. The Yadsik sought to unify the entire plateau under their rule, and after doing so engaged in battle with neighboring kingdoms and empires to assert their sovereignty over a distinct set of boundaries. Tibet was now an imperial power fighting for an empire the size of Rome. Initially, the Shang saw the Yadsik as a threat to their farming way of life, and engaged them in war in around 598. After 2 generations of fighting, from the base of their stone castle on the cliff above the Yadsik tributary of the Tsangpo River, the Yadsik defeated the final Shang resistance. For the next 2 decades, the Yadsik aimed to extend their authority over the Shang. However, once all the farmers and nomads of that region were finally unified under the centralized Yadsik dynasty, a Shang lord managed to poison the Yadsik king in 618. Instantly, his 13-year-old son Songtsen Gampo was made the king of all southern Tibet collectively. The Shang and other vassals, now unified in Tibet, swore allegiance to the new emperor with the following prose. Never will we be faithless to Emperor Songtsen Gampo, to his sons and his descendants, whatever they do. Never will we seek other overlords among other men. Never will we be at ease with others who are faithless. Never will we interfere with food and mix poison with it. Never will we address the first word to the emperor. Never shall there be envy towards our comrades. Never will we act unfairly towards those who are subject to us. Never will we be disobedient to whatever command the emperor may give. Songtsen Gampo then resumed his father's march toward the northeast kingdoms, and married his sister to the Shang dynasty. His sister was treacherous, and led her new husband into an ambush, killing him, and making Songtsen Gampo the legal sovereign over the Shang. Now the Tang dynasty began to take note of Tibet as a state which presents a unique challenge quite different from those of their other neighbors. In July 634, the Tang engaged in battle with the Yadsik people on the eastern edge of the Tibetan plateau, after they declared independence from Tang rule, as its constituent countries were always doing. In response to this conflict, Songtsen Gampo sent diplomats to engage in dialogue with Emperor Taizong in the autumn of 634. Tibet was in direct opposition of the Tang offensive. In order to show the Tang that he did not consider Tibet to be inferior, Songtsen Gampo sent a delegation with the request, either give Songtsen Gampo a Tang princess as a bride, or he will attack. Taizong did not view China as subordinate to Tibet, and so turned down the request. This means that the Tang rejected peace with Tibet, and Songtsen Gampo engaged on a western campaign for the next 2 years, conquering 2 border tribes and finally looting the Chinese town of Sungchu in 638. The Tang army sent to face Songtsen Gampo was defeated, and the Tibetan emperor urged the border tribes to revolt against the Tang. After winning a skirmish in 639, Emperor Taizong finally asked for peace, and it was given. Both sides claimed the other paid tribute to their courts. In 640, Tibetan minister Tongtsen arrived in Shangan with a dowry for a princess, a total of 5,000 ounces of gold and other treasure. After long deliberation, the Chinese sent Princess Wenqing, escorted by her brother, as far as the Tibetan border, where Songtsen Gampo met his newest bride. They married in Lhasa, and a period of peace began between Tibet and China. Tibetan armies even defended the Chinese when their envoy was attacked in India. Songtsen Gampo had 5 wives. The crown prince was born to the Tibetan wife. The Nepalese and Chinese wives are famous for the statues of the Buddha that they brought to Lhasa. The first 2 temples in Tibet were built to house them, the Ramach and the Jokhang. The Jokhang, it is said, is built on top of an ancient underground lake. At this time, Tibet received paper from China and they developed their script. Tibetan script is based on an Indian one from a Central Asian kingdom called Khotan. It was developed with the scholar Thomi Sambhota. During Songtsen Gampo's reign, laws were codified, and one code covered all of Tibet for the first time. For the first time, a standardized Tibetan language emerged alongside Buddhism, and a greater national identity. Songtsen Gampo's minister Tongtsen and envoy to China was found guilty of treason and blinded. Songtsen Gampo is considered a link to the Bodhisattva Chenrezig because of the amount he had done to support the growth of the religion of Buddhism in Tibet. Songtsen Gampo may have died in 649 after a plague entered his camp. Other accounts say he lived until he was 80. When he died, he dissolved into light and was absorbed into the wooden statue in the Jokhang.